wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brainflakes here, back with another Eternal Return video. For today's video, I want to get really in-depth about animals. Whether that's how many credits they give to you and your team when you take them down, what drops they have to offer, or even how to best farm them, I hope to cover all that in this video. So as a quick plug for my personal project, I will be linking a Google Doc, or rather a Google Form survey for amateur scrims. I'll leave most of the explaining in the description of the form just so that it's a bit easier on the video, but I just want to let you guys know because it is something that I really want to make work. With all that said, let's jump right into the video. So what are animals? Obviously, if you started playing this game, you know that animals are just these things like the boars, bats, chickens, wolves, and bears that just kind of float around the island. Obviously, you guys know that most of these animals will drop leather, which is crucial for your build, and I'm sure most of you know that wolves and bears have a tendency to drop rare materials such as tree, meteorite, mithril, and even force cores if they're bears. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to explain how the credit system for these animals work. So as I'm sure you're all aware, when you kill an animal, you get a certain amount of credits per animal. I'll have the exact numbers here on the side of the video, but basically this is your main form of income in game. There is a passive credit tick for 1 every 2 seconds, well it's actually 1 every 1.8 seconds, but for the sake of math, we'll be using 2 seconds to make everything look nice and pretty. I think this kind of brings into perspective how important each animal is, because this way I can kind of break down how much quote-unquote time you save per animal you kill to get your next big purchase. So for example, if you want to buy a tree or meteorite, that's going to be 200 credits, which can now be quantified as 400 seconds. 400 seconds comes out to be about 6.5 minutes, which is a pretty long time in game. Thankfully, we have animals to supplement this income, and it's a pretty big jump if you take it all into consideration. Bringing up the table up here once again, we can see that even just chickens basically skip you ahead in time for 4 seconds, and chickens don't spawn in singles. Chickens often spawn in 3 or 4 pairs, which means that you often jump ahead like 12-16 seconds from a pack of chickens alone. Obviously, chickens aren't the most efficient source of credits. You have to kill 100 chickens alone to even afford 1 meteor. But when you consider the fact that your teammates also exist, you can see how splitting up the task kind of makes it a lot faster, because you killing 50 chickens means that your teammates have to kill 50 chickens each as well. And now suddenly all 3 of you can afford a meteor, and 50 chickens isn't nearly as bad as 100 chickens, right? Not even counting the mutant chickens that you might find, which essentially count as double the normal chickens. So all these chicken deaths aside, you can really see how killing animals will stack up your credit count really quickly, which means that in the event that you don't get any objectives, whether it's trees, alphas, omegas, or even Wiggling, if you continue farming at a good pace and you understand why you're rotating around the map, it's not even that hard to end up with nearly Exodia by the time Final Zone rolls around. Not even mentioning the random chance to get those rare materials that I mentioned earlier from wolves and bears, and you can see just how effective it is to farm, as opposed to continuing to go to every objective and potentially risking your team's entire livelihood for those objectives. So, Bran, you might say, it's all very well that these animals are good to kill, but how exactly do I make sure I kill these effectively and efficiently? Well, thankfully, somebody much smarter than I have has made a web tool that I'll go ahead and link down below. So personally, these are the routes that I would take to farm in general. These include all those wolves and bears naturally, but don't take it too close to heart. A lot of stuff happens in any given game of Eternal Return, so this is more of just a reference than an actual guide, if that makes sense. I'll also go ahead and highlight certain spots that people don't really farm that often, so if you're just, in the area, or maybe you're desperately in need of more credits to revive a teammate, these places are generally places that aren't as farmed just because they're either out of the way, or people just don't prioritize them as much because they're not near wolves or bears. Speaking of wolves and bears, here are the screenshots for the supposed drop rate for those animals. I'm not actually sure if these numbers are found through the API or if they just tested them through sheer raw data, probably API. But in summary, every bear has about a 10% chance to drop you something valuable, and every wolf pack has about a combined chance of like 14% to drop you something valuable. Obviously, the mutant wolf pack and the mutant bear packs exist, but unfortunately, the mutant tag doesn't actually boost the chances for good drops. It simply means that there's more chances to get those drops. Because of these valuable drops, a lot of players will prioritize farming these on repeat as efficiently as they can. So this is the part of the video where I teach you, if you don't know how to do this, how to do exactly that. These guidelines will really only be accurate up until day 4, purely because after day 4, days and nights become really accelerated, and so the timing is all off. But essentially, if you kill wolves right on spawn, they will almost always respawn at the start of day 2, and if you kill bears right on spawn, they'll respawn about 20 seconds before night 2. You'll be able to see the exact timer if they're despawned, but the reason why I want to bring up the exact timing of when they respawn is purely because let's say that you missed the first wolf spawn of archery range, you can generally get there around the start of day 2 and then check it then, and they'll almost always be on a pretty short timer if not respawning right when you get there. Same thing with the bears that are in stream, temple, and beach, as well as the entirety of that dock, warehouse, and uptown area. And then assuming that someone kills them on that spawn, they'll come back around the same time on day 3 and for night 3. Obviously, if you're the person killing them, you'll have a much more precise timer and knowledge of when they do spawn, but these are just guidelines again for if you miss those spawns, then we need to go around to that area. But obviously, if you're in the area, might as well check them anyways because there's a lot of chaos on Lumia Island. There's a chance that they weren't killed to begin with. Oh right, and before I forget, the mutant wolf packs will always spawn at the start of day 2 in archery range, which aligns pretty well with the respawn in general, and also in factory, which will align with the respawn in hospital. The mutant bear packs will share the similar trait as the wolf packs do, where they will be spawning about the same time the second spawn of bears would be if they're killed on time, and this time they'll be spawning in temple and in beach. This does precisely align with battle zones, so if you see a battle zone in temple and beach, then they are a bit higher priority just because you can get even more mastery through those mutant bear packs. Just be wary, very few characters can actually solo take these camps. I'm sure you guys might have experienced this pain already, but if you haven't, if you are a squishy character with no good durability, don't touch them, they will murder you viciously. I once again want to re-emphasize the value of these non-wolf and non-bear spawns because once again, these clusters can be really valuable for just sheer credits, and credits obviously can still buy you these rare materials if you aren't getting to those objectives on time or you just happen to lose them in general. This video was pretty short, but I think it's a really basic concept that no one has necessarily covered on YouTube quite yet, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows the value of these animals because once again, just killing those like 7 chickens early on in the game might be the difference between you affording your VF blood before a battle zone, you know, if you're high rolling that hard, or maybe it's even the difference between you affording a resurrection on your teammate before day 5 comes around. So just be on top of this farm. Obviously don't grief your team to farm. It's always still correct to group up if there are potentially enemies that are lurking around in your zone. But obviously if you're on the quest to revive a teammate and you're trying to farm as quickly as possible, I'm hoping this video helps you guys achieve that task a bit easier in the future. With all that said, once again, remember the Scrims link down in the description below. But I hope you guys all have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.